that right? Robbie Lawler debuted at 19 years old. Did he debut against Tiki? Is that who Lawler first fought? One of Lawler's very early fights. I'm not sure he was 19. He might have turned 20. But he fought Aaron Riley, a Matt Hume disciple from AMC. And Lawler versus Riley was the best fight I had ever seen. And we'd never seen guys take blows like that in MMA. And moving forward in Lawler's career, we never saw anybody take blows from Lawler like that. Right? Like Aaron Riley deserved a lot more credit. Aaron Riley had a good career. He's got good memories. He wanted to be a coach. He's a very nice guy. He lives up the road. He deserves more credit. If you look at what Robbie Lawler just did, and you go back and watch what Riley took from Lawler and gave back, it was just one of these wonderful fights. And Robbie Lawler, I remember being in an event, and it was right after the UFC. They used to do some smaller shows. UFC used to play Friday nights, just so you know, right? Now they're on Saturdays at 10 o'clock Eastern. But they used to play Friday. And then they started playing Friday, and then sometimes it was Saturday, and it got a little bit confusing, and they finally locked in on Saturday. But I'm just reminding you, so they would play Friday night, but then you'd have somebody else trying to pick up the leftover fans, and they go to like the Hard Rock, they get a good little casino, they set up a cage, and they do a show on Saturday. And it was great fun, actually. If you made it out to Vegas and it was a destination, right, there's only 5 and 6 UFCs a year. So if you could go out and get 2 shows for one, if you had to buy a couple of tickets, it's a very cool thing. There was a show and they brought Lawler out and people were coming up there saying hi to him. And he did not like it. I mean, to the point that he was a jerk. Yeah, I'll go as far as to say it, but he didn't want to be. He didn't know how to deal with that. He was 19 years old and everyone knows who he is. His fight with Riley was a big deal, and Lawler got discovered. Dana White used to attend events live. He would attend and he would recruit. And one of the events that he went to, one of the few events that there even was, but it was called Super Brawl. Very good promoter named TJ. Used to do a great job, kind of stepped away from the sport. Was putting these shows on called Super Brawl in Hawaii. And Robbie Lawler went out there and he had the heavy hands. He was a young kid. He had the military. He had a couple of things with him. He had the right look. He had the scary eyes. Great big shelf life. And Dana White stood up from his chair and started yelling. He was just yelling. He wasn't even talking to anyone, but he was yelling, "I'm going to make that kid a star." Whether that happened or not, I was told that it happened. Josh Barnett told me that he was there at that he saw Dana, and then Dana signs Robbie Lawler. I've always believed that to be true. I'm quite sure that it is a true story. What I'm sharing for you is early on in Robbie's career, he wasn't ready socially to handle that success, right? And I witnessed that with my own, where I'd see him, man. I was one of those guys that wanted to go up and pat him up, like, "Oh, hey, you're the guy, you won, you fought Aaron Riley, it was the greatest fight I've ever seen." And I didn't do it because I saw other people that did. He didn't like it. He did not like it. And I took that with me. I remember the first time I said hi to him. I was going to say hi to him that night. I didn't do it. And he even did an interview after that with one of the .coms and said, "I don't know what these people are walking up to me like they know me for." And it was like 15 years later. And I ran into Robbie. It was in a bar, just in the hotel we were staying at for the IFL. And I didn't really know what to say. Do I go introduce myself? Do I not? Right. I mean, I had this thing all these years before where he looked like he didn't want anyone to say hi. And he said, "What's up, Chael?" Like that, like we knew each other. And I rolled right. "What's up, Robbie?" We started talking, and before I know, we just changing numbers, and he's doing podcasts and whatnot. But he was such an interesting guy. I don't know of anyone that had a surgence. I could tell you a couple of resurgences. I can't think of anyone that had a surgence as late in his career as Robbie Lawler. And it was very definable. I mean, you could study the timeline and study Robbie's career, and I don't think I missed any of his fights, man. I watched in the Strike Force, and I watched him at 170, and I watched him at 185. I watched all these matches. I'll share with you, if you follow the timeline of his career, you could take a finger and you could poke it right through the calendar. It was when Robbie went to American Top Team. And even talking with teammates, right? Like, remember the Milicic guy saying that Robbie didn't like to warm up. On fight night, he would not warm up. He would be in the back and decline warm up. He'd stretch a little bit, wait till they called his name. And I'll just tell you, as an athlete, that's a very hard thing to do because there's something called a second wind. And if you can burn that first one out, it doesn't feel very good. It doesn't get you very far. But that second one, boy, that wall's a lot further out there. In most athletes, I would trust that he would know himself, but maybe not. And then he left Milicic and ended up in Arizona. And a lot of those guys said that he would come in and he would work hard, but it would be shorter. He wouldn't come in and do the whole, he would come in shorter. And he'd go intense, and he'd go hard, and he wouldn't miss practice, but he would go short. I remember hearing these things. He goes out to Coconut Creek, and his teammates are talking about they can't go to the gym and not see him. There was some kind of a strength and conditioning coach, specifically at ATT in Coconut Creek. There was some with the strength and conditioning where Robbie just never missed. He believed in this guy, he felt, and off they went. And you look at Robbie Lawler, who used to be 5-minute guy, right? He was going to bring you hell in that first round. But if you could get out of it, the odds really look good for you, right? Or at least they started to increase. You get into the third round. Now they're leaning in your favor. He goes from 5-minute guy to 5-round guy, right? Or the most endurance athletes, the Matt Browns, the Rory McDonalds, just for example, where these guys are talking about his toughness and they're talking about his conditioning. They're talking about his heart. They're talking about how hard he was to deal with later in the fight. I would argue for you, one of the great rivalries ever, and it came and left, but it should be revisited. Ever. One of the great rivalries ever, without exaggeration. Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks. But was so incredible about the Lawler era was the 5th round. And that just wasn't a tool that he had in his 20s. It took maturity and it took into his 30s. And you could point right to where it came. And now he's done. I mean, nobody gets to go out like that, right? But, sometimes it's what dreams are made of. Congratulations and thanks for the memories, Robbie Lawler.